Hi, hello everyone. Um, my name is Wataru Tominaga, and I'm really honored to be invited this talk event. And yes, I hope you enjoy my talk. And as Bruce mentioned, I'm a fashion designer, and I'm also studied textile design and fashion design and fine art as well. And so now I'm going to introduce my work, and I'm going to talk about my experience in studying fashion and fine art, and how I use textile in the different kind of practice and different kind of setting. Okay. Okay. This was my first collection I made in 2015, and this was my actually final collection for the schoolwork. And then during this time, I was studying London in fashion school, and I was thinking like what is really interesting about textile and fashion I'm interested in. And then, okay, I'm gonna show next picture. Actually, like these people was my classmates and tutors, and I was really surprised and encouraged by how they are wearing like clothes like really unisex and genderless, and I don't know if it's maybe more like non-binary way of wearing, but it's not so it doesn't happen so often in Japan. And maybe in 90s, when I was grown up in 90s, there was a kind of movement of fashion snap. And then at that time in Tokyo, especially in the area of Harajuku, we could see really experimented way of wearing clothes. And now it's almost disappearing in Japan. But when I was in London, like I could still see many people is trying kind of personalizing their gender norms, I think. And because of experience this situation, I had a lot of chance to think about like what textile, or like how textile and fashion can convey the gender norms. Okay, then I started to research about visual culture in the history, and I'm often really interested in the pop culture and domestic situation when we no where we live. And the picture in the poster of a film was really interesting for me, because always in film we can see different type of people community. And then in the picture I could see that often like women wearing this kind of apron as a mom and depicted in the film. And the guys always wearing that, especially the father wearing this kind of vest and some decoration, but really minimum. Like it's come from, I think, rugby uniform or polo shirt. And then, but somehow, when I think what I really like about fashion, I always really liked mixing different kind of gender norms, different kind of convention in same style. So that's what I'm really interested in. So I really wanted to try to mix something really feminine, something to be considered really feminine, or something really considered to be boring as a men's fashion. And this picture I found in a book. In the library, there are so many historical magazines since it's starting from maybe 20s to present. And I looked every magazine, almost every magazine in the 20th century, like Vogue or Le Official or Harper's Bazaar. And I'm really interested in mostly I'm interested in 60s and 70s style when they start dressing like men's clothes. The women started dress like men and men dressing like a bit feminine. And this is, I think, 70s for knitting pattern, I guess. And then I really like the guys wearing this kind of, I don't know, really abstract, almost abstract painting for me. Like, and I found the designer Rudi Gelnehi. I'm really not good at pronunciation, so he was Austrian-born fashion designer, but I think he became American. And he really hated like sexualizing body. So that's why he was really using a lot of minimal decoration. It's stripes on female body. And when he used models, mostly the models is not smiling. And I was also interested in that. Like he was using like model or human body more like a sculpture and visual element of life. And while I was researching about 20th century fashion, I was also interested in Madame Grace dress, which make me feel really feminine. At the same time, it's really strong as a textile and as a construction of fashion and other style as well. And I wonder if I could make something represent this kind of strong, not femininity, but strong feeling of textile, and at the same time really make people feel boring, like polo shirts or rugby shirts, like guys wearing on the street. So I tried many samples of experimenting fabric, and I was painting fabric, and I was printing fabric, and I was using a lot of printed textile. And when I was researching about printed textiles, I found that certain prints are used for certain gender, or certain kind of fabric often use certain gender. And I was really interested in like how like paisley or flower or plaid were used to present kind of gender or non-gender. Then I experimented more with stripes and how I make this fabric more interesting on the body. So I took a lot of patterns from like old vintage menswear, like the vest or the rugby shirt. And then I started to experiment on the body using the fabric, like how I can make it more interesting on the 3D way. And at first I was trying to put on the ready-made clothes like this, but I thought maybe I need to research about the shape, what is the best shape I think of to this fabric. And then I started designing, like I thought I want my collection, I want my clothes to show some really conventional aspect. So I really wanted to make the shape really straight, or I didn't really want it to make extreme shape or some sculpture shape actually. And then this was the collection I made. And yeah, actually most of the fabrics the same fabric, the same techniques. And I used some corduroys or some shirting, cotton fabric for shirts to show some conventional aspect of the style and design. I'm going to show one show I did after this collection. This was supported by Mercedes-Benz, and it happened in Germany. And yeah, this time I put on female model as well, because first time when I did photo shooting, I put everything on men. Even I thought it could be unisex, because nowadays I think if we put on women, everything could be possible, and there is not some feeling about I don't know. I really like the feeling of kind of strangeness, so that's why for the shooting I used male models, but for the show I wanted to have both, so I had. But actually I don't really like fashion shows, because for me, fashion show is perfect way of showing clothing as commodity, but that's what I don't like. I want to treat my clothing sometimes more like sculpture, or sometimes the way of performing it. So I'm going to talk about it later. And I normally don't like working with someone I don't know, so I don't like hiring models, to be honest. But yeah, sometimes it's necessary to work when especially if I work with Mercedes-Benz or big sponsors. Sometimes there is no choice, to be honest. But yeah, I don't really like this presentation. Okay, I stop it now. And then next one. After I made this the last collection, the collection I showed, I won a prize in France. It's called the Yale Mode Festival, and that is a well-known fashion competition in France. And the sponsor of the competition was Chanel. So I got a chance to work with Chanel's embroidery studio. So this is actually Chanel's embroidery studio called Lusage, which established in more than 100 years before for making military embroideries for men. And they have a lot of archives for more than 100 years of military embroidery and couture embroidery. So I went the archive to see a lot of Christian Dior or Schiaparelli or Chanel. And then there is a creative director in the studio. And I asked especially for using that kind of, there is a name for that kind of curvy shape in French, but I totally forgot. So I'm asking now again, what's the name? But sorry, I still didn't get answer. And then that is often used in the military costumes. So I wanted to use it in a kind of genderless way. And normally the embroideries in Chanel is really using really fine materials, really thin yarns or really interesting thing, but not really masculine object. And I really wanted to use something people feel a bit masculine about the material. So I decided to use mountain, like climbing rope, which is used for climbing and at the same time for keeping construction workers safe. So I decided to use this material. The director said like for more than 100 years, they have the archive, but they don't they have never used this material. So I was really surprised. And the next collection I used, I was thinking that this is second collection and smooth board. And then this time I was more thinking about uniform and for costume. And then I wanted to mix them again in the kind of genderless way or non-binary way on men. So the picture on the here, this picture, when I found in a fashion book, I was really interested in because they are wearing like quilting skirt. At the same time, I think this is a uniform for a company. And I was really interested in the mixture of this kind of chaotic situation. So I was researching about uniforms like this. This is for like French work uniform. I don't know from which age, but this is like a flying uniform. And this is East European costumes. Okay. And then this is actually the embroidery I finished with research. And then I start designing, like combining with many techniques and many silhouettes. Not many silhouettes maybe, but yeah, many details. And finally I made like 11 looks of the collection. And I think these are easy to see, like how I use like print, like flower print or embroidery or the shape of uniform on the same look on the guys. And now I'm gonna talk about a bit print. This was kind of small research for third collection, which I presented last October in Tokyo and Nigeria. And this time I really wanted to use actual like print drawn by hand. So I was researching the 20th century's really colorful print like Kenzo's 80s print jacket or this Vittorio Acconello. He was artist who drew really iconic scarf of Gucci. And I was really interested in, again, mixing workwear and this kind of luxury print textile. So I drew myself this pattern next to this research. And then this time I used a lot of male and female models in different kind of background. And this was presented in Tokyo Fashion Week. And this is a collection. You can see a lot of different, like actually I didn't show in the research, but I mixed a lot of different elements. Like I was researching about bike culture in 90s as well. And you can see the orange skirt, which is really like abstract shape of snake actually. Like I got influenced a lot by the bike stickers. And that's it, for me is kind of masculine, but at the same time really pop yeah. And on the right, the blue look, I really wanted to make really childish like textile. So I researched about a lot like Eastern European like children's clothes, and then I tried to put in the workwear shape as well. And this was a show in Nigeria. It was held in the really big shop. Actually, this is a shop, looks like museum, but really which owner, like which female owner owned this shop. And then, I don't know, again, I did fashion show, but it was also because it's not my decision again, because it was part of really big, what's kind of group show said, named Fashion and Culture Exchange Africa Japan, made by like Japan Fashion Week, between like African organization and the Japanese organization. Okay. And then now I want to talk about how I think about like displaying object and fashion, because as I said, I don't really like fashion shows. I really like thinking like how object value changed by the situation or by by the presentation. And after I did my bachelor in fashion, I went to do fine arts course for thinking about that actually. So I was interested, when I was researching, I read about a small essay called Commodity Fetishism, and which is written by Karl Marx. And it was talking about like a relationship between like object and human, not between human and human. And then I was really thinking like how object can seduce people. And I think fashion product is always doing that naturally, but it's not meant to be really artistic. But I wanted to think it more artistic in this time when I was studying in the school. But in this photo, I didn't use fashion because this time I was more interested about how I display things. So I didn't use fashion, but for future, I think I want to use this kind of my sculpture and fashion together as a presentation of my collection. And this was also my work. And after the study, actually I went to Paris, but now the picture is not in Paris, so I'm gonna talk about something else. This is actually in Los Angeles. I was invited to do an exhibition in a gallery called Nonaka Hill. And then Nonaka Hill represents many Japanese artists. And I was invited to show in between like a painter and a sculptor. And the painter is called Nao Takahiro. He make paintings by wearing canvas on his body, and he's like drawing on his body and maybe doing performance, and then he make paint and textures on the on the canvas. And then the sculpture is made by Mihodohi, which also has really tactile, tangible textile in the work. So the director of the owner of the gallery wanted to show them together, and I was really glad that, because normally even museum or gallery do fashion exhibition, they don't compare with art object, and I was really glad that the work was compared to other art object. And yeah, I don't have time so much. Yeah, this is a show in Los Angeles. And I'm gonna show a video now. This was in Athens. After I graduated from art school, I was invited to do art in residency in Paredo, Tokyo for 1 year to make an exhibition in Athens. And the exhibition was a collaboration between Greek opera. So we needed to work with dancers to make a kind of performance. So you can see my costume here. We rented one building, and 6 of the artists collaborated with dancers, and we made choreography. For me, I thought dancers really doesn't like costumes because it's kind of restriction for the body, but I really wanted to use a restriction as an expression of something, or for transforming like human body into another kind of creature. So I asked dancers to use my costume and some costumes which has like element of daily object to use to make like new movement or to invent new creature for their dance. Sometimes they are like trying to be plants, or sometimes they are trying to be like animals or other kind of creatures. And this is another artist's work, but she is a film artist, and she used dancers as sounds and a character of the movie. And I really liked her work. Her name is Lola Gonzalez. And this is another artist called Tomatarure. He used copy machine as a sound system, and as a performing, I don't know, like he wanted to generate performance by doing by making copies of human body. And I think it was really interesting and clever way of using machine as art. Okay, I go next actually. And then the show actually during the day it was not like exhibition, and then at night dancers came in and performed and activated the exhibition. This was a picture. You can see a bit more. But at this time, I really felt really difficult to work with dancers because some dancers really doesn't understand why I want them to use costume or like having certain restrictions. Okay, then this one is more maybe easy to see like how they use the costume. Yeah, yeah, it was a picture. And then during the performance. And then for the last thing I wanna show is my workshop. I did workshop in the Pompidou, in Centre Pompidou in Paris. I did workshop for teenagers, and when I was young, I had a desire. I don't know where it's come from, but I always wanted to wear my paintings. So I wanted to make the children do that. So I asked children to paint in a special dye, which is translated to polyester or synthetic fabric by heat. So it's not directly drawn on the fabric, but it's kind of print, heat transfer print. And then I told them like to make what they want. Like this cute, like 6 years old boy, he made a T-shirt for sleeping, and he didn't know how to sew, but I teach, and he could really sew something. And this was the other result of people making what they want and what they like to have as a piece of art in daily life. Okay, I'm done. Thank you for listening. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Wataru. I personally really like Wataru's work because he focuses on things beyond the silhouette in his endeavors to sort of break down these binarisms, looking into the meanings of patterns, plaids, and also beadwork, embroidery, as if they're already little stages that are pre-programmed into cloth. I think that's really interesting. And next we have Fix Studios. Fix Studios is a contemporary fashion label founded in 2012 by Fiona Lau and Kane Pickin. And in the past few years, they've, I believe, moved studios. So they have experience working in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and now in Shanghai. Please join me in welcoming Fiona and Kane of Fix Studios.
Hi, I'm Fiona.
Hi. Maybe I'll just start by giving a bit of a background and context to what we do. So actually, the way we came into having a fashion brand was almost by accident. We actually started working together as more of a side project. I come from an art background, and Fiona from fashion. And we were just, in the beginning, we were just making kind of projects more for a gallery exhibition context, but using materials and ideas from fashion. And it was really just a way for us to I don't know, work together and do something interesting. And it sort of gained some traction, and over time, it sort of just slowly developed into being a
fashion brand.
Yeah, being a kind of a real brand. And so part of our, I don't know, challenge or something that we've been interested in doing is how to sort of merge those two things together. So the things we're doing for more exhibition context, as well as making commercially viable, fashion collections. So that's a little bit and we just picked out some projects that we've done that sort of illustrate how these things sort of inform each other. And
yeah. And I guess now we kind of work with some kind of proper stores. We kind of maybe a bit more commercial than before.
Yeah.
So here's some photos about before. We were based in Wutong Mountain, which is like, just like if you get to the end of the train line from Hong Kong and then it's Shenzhen, and then we just had like a 4-level building at the bottom of Wutong Mountain, and that's before, when we first started, we did our own in-house production.
How do I go the
you're
other
going
way?
the wrong way.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So you can see on the bottom is just like it's like a 5-minute walk from our studio, and then this is like some pictures of inside our studio. So we just kind of lived on the top, and then, you know, the bottom was for like sewing and sampling and packing and stuff.
Yeah, so we had this idea when we started. It was a little bit of this sort of like utopian idea that we would start a brand and it would be, the model was like a knitting circle. So it would be like a whole bunch of people just like working and hanging out and like chatting and stuff. And we kind of had, that did work for a while, but like as things progress, things change. But I think it's important to the background to how we work. It's very like DIY, very hands-on, very lo-fi. And then the thing is like, how do you translate that into something that's selling like in a department store or like a kind of like high-end fashion store or something? So we try to like straddle this line between the two.
But yes, well, we recently moved to Shanghai because I guess in the end, like, it became a bit too much because the production got larger, and then we'd have to, like, you know, get a bigger building and would become more like manufacturers. So we decided to then, you know, just work with some other like manufacturing partners, and then we can move to Shanghai.
Yeah, and it's just been an evolution about how we work and how we present things and how they inform each other. So this is a project that is an example of how one of the exhibitions we did, I think usually we would always have this interplay between what we were doing in an exhibition context or an art context and then the collections. And over time, more and more, those two things sort of merge more and more together. So this was an exhibition, I can't remember, like a really long time ago.
But I think we were flying a lot domestically, a lot of Chinese airlines.
So we were like really into the airline blankets. We thought they were like kind of cool.
We took quite a few actually.
Interesting objects. Yeah, and we'd always take them every time we took a flight. And we had this kind of a collection of them. And then for this exhibition, we made them into like suit jackets and exhibited them as suit
like
jackets.
China Southern, and I can't remember that one, and then China Eastern and stuff. But then we found the distributor for the airline blankets, so we made these jackets commercially with the airline blankets.
Yeah, so like this was one of the examples of how we were like, how can we bridge this kind of gap? Because obviously, you know, we needed a way. We liked the materiality and like
the graphic part.
The graphic part, and they're like fireproof and all this weird stuff. But we're like, but how, you know, how can we like repackage and like market these as like fashion items? And like, you know, this is a little bit, I think, of an experiment of if people could accept it in a way, because we had to even like explain to the buyers, like, no, this is like, it's actually really a blanket from the plane. It's not another fabric made to look like that. And they were like, yeah, that's really cool.
Actually, I think some people even wore the jacket on their flights, and it looked quite funny.
Yeah. So anyway, the way we did it was we found out who was actually the manufacturer, and they
just bought some extra.
Yeah. And they like didn't ask any questions. They were like, yeah, you need like 100 China Eastern Airlines flights, blankets, and you're not China Eastern Airlines. That's fine. So
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
And we did this project for
another
project for Woolmark in Hong Kong. They had these dancers like on the top right, and they wanted us to just show some characteristics of wool. So we just they gave us some wool jersey.
No, but we asked for wool jersey.
Oh, yeah, you can just do any wool.
Yeah, you could do anything, but we wanted to. I think the reason we asked for wool jersey is we wanted something that was like
good for
really,
moving.
Yeah, but also like really, really basic. Like not normally what you'd think of as like a fine knitted wool or something. It's like, it looks like normal track fabric, like a tracksuit fabric.
But like, I guess like one of the great characteristics of wool is that it's like good for dyeing and stuff. So, and it's good for moving, or for dancing, whatever. So we just went on a trip to India, and we brought back all these herbs, and we took them back to Wutong Mountain and spices, and we just kind of painted on the fabrics. You can see it on our laundry line on the rooftop. And then we just made these kind of little tracksuit outfits with the fruits and the vegetables and the herbs and spices. But,
And they smelled really amazing.
they were really strong. And I think maybe it didn't set too well. So when they'll dance, you can see bits of like turmeric everywhere. But, the smell was really strong, yeah.
Yeah, this is an idea we've yet to put into like a commercial practice.
No, but in the end, I think we thought this kind of fabric looked quite nice. And I think then we like took it to a digital printer or something for some edition.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the same.
Yeah.
No, but actually originally this was an art project.
Oh, yeah.
Like many, many years ago. We don't even have photos of that.
Yeah, actually, originally we did something similar for this project in Australia
made
where
curtains.
we made these curtains and we just kind of sourced some local kind of things, like I think it was like fruit and vegetables and like mosquito repellent and Chinese white wine and all these things. And I think we like painted the curtains for the exhibition, but yeah, we lost the pictures. So yeah, but it was before this one. This is the second.
Yeah, so this is one of the Walmart collection.
Yeah, for Walmart capsule things. Oh yeah, that's one from the first exhibition. Yeah. And then I think we also started like doing these things before we would like, transfer like a photo image into like digital weaving.
Yeah. So, and one of the things about our practice is we're always about like reinterpreting the everyday. So all the materials and like the imagery and basically all the kind of the sort of source of inspiration that we have is just from our immediate environment. And I guess while we were living in Wutong Mountain, it was a very kind of natural, kind of like local environment. So yeah, we had some photos from in the studio, around the studio, that we got made into these like digital
Weaves.
Fabrics, and then we worked them into garments and
this is
soft
reworked
furnishings.
into a jacket, and then this one's a little circle rug, and then it's got like these inbuilt, you can't really see so, but inbuilt pot plant holders in the same fabric. So it's like rug.
An all-in-one rug.
Yeah, all-in-one rug. It
And
comes
actually-
with your own pots.
And that one on the left was from that magazine. Remember, it was a collaboration with.
Oh, I can't remember,
Anyway, yeah.
And then you can see, with how we cut them into panels for like jackets or something like that. So it's like, just photos and then, digital weave.
Yeah, and as you can see, like the work from home text was very much, this idea about this disintegration between like work and life and how those things merge or whatever.
And then we did this project, I think, for the Shakao Design Museum. It's like kind of like weaving. We worked with this textile artist where we were like Sophie Wise, and she just used like the local fruit wrappers and like the fruit packaging and weaving them into like this kind of fabric here, and we just made like a small bag and jacket.
Yeah, so it was all just like recycled kind of materials.
Yeah.
It was a highly laborious process.
Mm-hmm. We started doing, because we're really into this rag rug weaving technique where you make like, those IKEA bath mats where you just like shred up old fabrics and then you just kind of weave them into bath mats.
Like I think one of the issues that like we kind of faced as like a young designer is, and also like trying to address some issues around sustainability, was just like excess fabric. We would always have excess fabric every season that was accumulating, that was difficult to manage. It was hard to reuse because it wasn't a big enough quantity to reuse, and it's difficult to recycle fabric and stuff. So we just started using this technique because it was the most simple, basic, like rudimentary weaving technique that anyone can do. So we'd have a bunch of people like come to the studio and just like weave panels of fabric. And like Fiona said, it was a reference in a way to these like IKEA rag rugs that are just made from old discarded fabric, but we were using like really amazing like cashmere and silk, and so they look like rags, but they were actually really luxurious.
Yeah, because it's such a shame. Otherwise, you've got like 10, 20 meters of some really beautiful fabric, and then you can't really do anything for the collection. So.
And so we started thinking about different ways we could integrate this again into the collection and make it into like a commercially viable kind of way of working.
So I actually bought like a pile of these hobby weaving kind of sets like this. It's like Japanese hobbyists kind of thing.
Very DIY.
Yeah, so we just like cut up old bits of fabrics or like old posters from like old photo shoots and stuff and cut them up and reweave them. So you can see like...
So we started, the first time we did it in a collection, we just used panels of this weaving in other items. And we weren't really sure how people would, like buyers or customers would react to it because it was kind of heavy and pretty rough. But they did really well. So each season we sort of brought this idea back and tried to rethink how we could do it in like, you know, a different way, a slightly more interesting way. And yeah, these are some examples as in garments. But after a few seasons, like we kind of also like had felt like we exhausted the recycling fabric sort of idea, and also we recycled a lot of fabric. So we started thinking about other materials that we had around the studio that could also be used in the same way. And we'd been doing for many seasons, photo shoots using big photographic backdrops. And we never threw them away because they were really cool, but like they were just like stored in the studio, rolled up. And we thought maybe we could like use those as fabric. So we cut them up in the same way that you would shred the fabric and weave them into garments. And that was also really cool. And then we're invited by this museum to...
this like exhibition before to just make some fabric.
Is it this exhibition?
Yeah, this exhibition. And then...
But we'd also like used all of the prints that we had. So we actually contacted some of the print shops that we used to make the prints and asked them if they had any like, you know, like misprints, because we'd always see that have like, you know, like things that didn't work out or whatever. And they gave us a bunch of fruit excess posters. Or misprinted advertisements for fruit yogurt. And yeah, we weave these into these kind of giant rugs for this exhibition.
And here's some pictures of like the rag rug technique, like the IKEA bath mat. So you can see how they kind of entered the collection and were quite commercially viable because it's just like through panels, but they look quite interesting, yeah.
Yeah, they look like the real thing, but they're like really amazing fabrics.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's just a few different applications of the rag weaving.
Yeah, that's the same one.
Yeah. So, and then, we did
like
a few times.
We got a lot of mileage out of that idea. Yeah.
And then we also started doing this upcycle quilting kind of thing where we just use like old...
Just like offcuts.
Offcuts, and then like...
So we would literally just like pick stuff up off the floor and just like put it together into giant patchworks. Again, another very straightforward, easy to manage kind of, like not overthinking or not trying to put too much like technique or something into it. We just wanted to make it as like simple and direct as possible. And the good thing about that is it also means you can use lots, like interns can do it as well. So you have like teams of interns like working on making this stuff, which is really good.
This is our kind of farmer collection that we showed in Paris with all the lettuce, and I thought like the patchwork quilting kind of matched the farmer aesthetic.
Yeah.
Here's some more pictures from the collection. So you can see we did the upcycled quilting in some of the outfits.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things like for us, as I said, was to these things that we were doing that were like kind of fun and interesting for us in the studio, to really like work them into the collections and for them to be actual items that you can buy and they can be sold in the store rather than just like concept items. And it can be challenging, but we were really like surprised at how kind of well, you know, like we work a lot with this department store called Lane Crawford, and how well they kind of take to these kind of ideas and really understand the thinking and the concept behind it and are willing to sort of like, I don't know, pass that on to like, you know, informing customers or something about that. Because I think in the beginning we were really worried that in the world of like fashion or something, these kind of not so polished or whatever you'd call them techniques are maybe not so acceptable, but it turns out, yeah, it kind of is.
But so this is the farming collection. We also made these hats that are quite large to protect you against the sun and to keep your ears warm. It's finished.
That's it. Wow.
Sorry.
That was fast.
Sorry, we're very fast.
Okay. We just finished 5 minutes early.
15.
15.
Maybe.
Thank you, Fiona. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Kane. And thanks very much for being a... it seems like you both have worked around the world, and in each location, depending on the context, has generated a certain way of making things and repurposing the materials of these. For example, in Shenzhen, repurposing the materials of this production hub and finding ways to use waste is very important. So thank you. And for now, we will have a tea break, which will last a little longer than said 15 minutes. So please reconvene at 2:45 for 2 more speakers and our crosstalk session in the end. Thank you.